丈夫だよ。
Hey everybody, welcome back to Okashicon Presents Japan Stories with me, Julianne, also known online as Julianne in Japan, although obviously this year I have not been able to get over there. Today we're not really talking about Japan specifically, we are talking about long-haul flights, so I hope, hi Saja, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope that wherever you are planning on going, I hope that you are able to get there in the coming year and that hopefully these tips will help you stay comfortable as much as possible on a long-haul flight adventure and or getting over jet lag. So we will be diving to that very shortly. I have some quick announcements because we have some cool stuff coming up. So the most important thing, first off, I really appreciate you guys for being here on a Sunday during this holiday week. I know that you guys have lots of other things that you could be doing, and we are so grateful to have you and your eyeballs. Hi, Raina. Nice to see everybody. I know that more people will be watching some replay because obviously people are busy with friends and family right now. It is actually my parents' wedding anniversary today, so we have family stuff going on after this. So I really appreciate you guys. You have been an important part of the Okashicon family for all of 2020, and we are so happy that you're still with us and will be continuing with us into next year, I hope. And speaking of that, our biggest announcement, this big event, not only do we have this ticker going because we have a giveaway coming, but New Year's Eve, we have a huge event coming. Let's get that graphic up there. We have Sayonara 2020, a virtual New Year's Eve party where we have guests that are going to be appearing live from Japan, talking to us about food, about photography, taking us on a live first shrine visit. We're going to be talking about what New Year's is like in Japan. We're going to be talking about to some documentary filmmakers. We're going to be talking to some authors. We're going to be talking to some people who run wonderful blogs and YouTube channels for content that you can consume in 2021 as you are looking for inspiration for going to Japan, or at least armchair visits. Some of these are definitely going to be some very unique activities that you'll be able to do virtually. And I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but I am really looking forward to some of these virtual tours that are going to be discussed. So I hope that you all will come back on New Year's. That's New Year's Eve. North American time, and it's New Year's Day if you are in like Australasia, or especially if you're in Japan. So we have 4-hour time slot. Hopefully you'll be able to pop in at some point during that, and we are going to be multi-streaming both here on our Twitch platform and also on our Facebook. We don't usually do that because it's a little bit hard for me to keep up with comments that way, but for New Year's, because we have such a big cast of people who are going to be joining us, we want to make sure as many people can come and join our party as possible. And of course, we will have anime filler in there as well to show you some of what New Year's is like in Japan. So I really hope you guys will come. Tell your friends, tell your family. Remember, Tabi Eats is going to be with us. Lisa Wallen of NHK World is going to be with us. We have some fantastic guests. Filmmaker Felicity Tillich is going to be with us. Musician Elizaveta, who is sort of like a pop opera singer, is going to be one of our musical guests. We have Steffi Hakubi as a musical guest of Hakubiverse. We have just some amazing people. We've got some Twitch streamers going to talk about gaming. We have all kinds of awesome stuff, people for you. And we have this big giveaway. We have some fantastic prizes. We have anime prizes. We have makeup prizes, fashion prizes, all kinds of really neat stuff. So please do enter the giveaway. This is the first time it's being announced. We will be putting it on our social media later. But please click through, because just historically speaking, in AkashiCon giveaways, you have a great chance of winning something. I'm sure a lot of our regulars will attest to that. So again, the prizes this time are the best that we've had. So for any of these little events, so I would highly recommend entering. As far as the rest of announcements, obviously this is our final regular program for 2020. We are hopefully, I'm going to knock on wood. Hopefully, everything will go smoothly into 2021, and we will be able to start off with a bang on New Year's. We will be carrying over into actual New Year's Day. We will make sure that 2020 comes out of existence and 2021 comes in, and then we will be starting our regular programming up again. We will not be having anime afternoons in January, because that would be like pretty much the day after New Year's, and I imagine most of us have sleep to catch up on at that point. But we will be having Make Your Monday, where I'm going to be talking about the fun things to do with washi tape. We will be having Japan Stories, where Rob from The Real Japan is going to talk to us about if you're planning a trip to Japan, but you've been to the big cities already, and you want to know like how to maybe branch out into other areas, where to go, how to decide, analysis paralysis. There's so many cool things to do in Japan. And we're going to be talking with Rob, who specializes in that, about how to plan, your next bigger and better trip, and to see something that maybe a lot of first-time or novice tourists to Japan don't get to see. So definitely stay tuned again. And obviously, we also have the Demo Disc AkashiCon. So that is our usual programming. Again, we're not having anime afternoons on the first Saturday of the month, but we do have Demo Disc AkashiCon on the second Sunday, Make Your Monday on the second Monday, and Japan Stories right now on the fourth Sunday. So I certainly hope that you can join us. Those are the announcements today. We will probably keep both my email. That's a Make Your Monday banner. My director is always trying to show that to us. We will have the ticker going for the giveaway going throughout the thing, and also my email address will pop up occasionally. Remember, if you guys have any questions or comments, if you're on live, please drop them in the chat. We really appreciate any kinds of questions. Banner is right. Don't use your fabric scissors on paper or anything other than fabric, but not relevant today. So we'll get there. But yeah, like I said, if you guys have questions or comments after this, or if you're watching the replay, you can always contact us at AkashiCon, or you can contact me on my email address, which will be shown throughout the broadcast occasionally. But most importantly, go sign up for that giveaway. I am now going to pull up the slides. Today's kind of a casual day. Not only in my attire, we're talking about long haul flights. And the only thing I could find that was a long haul flight is the Serenity Firefly. That would be a very long haul flight, but we can go back to the slides. Y'all don't really need to see my t-shirt that much. Again, like I said, today we're going to talk about surviving any kind of long haul flight. My definition for that is 6 hours or more, and anytime you're going over at least 4 time zones. So it could be domestically with the United States, maybe you're going to Hawaii. It could be going to Europe, any other continent. I haven't been to Africa personally, but I've been to Asia, Australasia, could be South America. Even if you're not changing time zones too much, just being on a long flight that is going to kind of mess with your own personal sense of time or just comfort. These will all apply. So again, if you have friends and family members who travel other places, hopefully you'll be able to get some tips for them too. So let's move into today's presentation. I know a lot of people say getting there is half the fun. Sure, if you're on a road trip, not if you're flying. Unless you're on a spacecraft, maybe it is, but I have not been so blessed so far. Getting there for me is the hardest part. It is the most painful part. It is honestly the most tedious part of traveling. It's just something, in my opinion, to get it over with and get where you're going. And I'm really looking forward to the future, not only with our robot overlords, but with our teleporters. They've been promising that for years on sci-fi television, and I'm still waiting. Let's talk about what we will be talking about briefly today. This is the order of topics. Again, everything's pretty chill today, so I'm happy if you guys to ask me questions at any point. Although if it's something that I will be talking about later, I will say, let's hold that for a minute. I'll come back to it. So that's why I'm giving you this list. In order, we're going to talk about advanced planning, which is like things you need to do before you pack your carry-ons or before you head to the airport. What I recommend that you wear while you're traveling, things to do while you're at the airport, and like getting through security and things like that. Things to do while you're in the boarding the plane part, because this is actually pretty essential. You can set yourself up for a great flight or set yourself up for a lot of hassle during that boarding time. So it's a very short part of travel, but I think pretty crucial. Then we'll talk about my tips for in-flight and useful items that you may want to have with you on board. And then we'll finally get to jet lag at the end, because jet lag, in a lot of ways, I'm very much a believer in tough love when it comes to jet lag, tough love on yourself. So my tips are much smaller and a little bit more difficult to follow, but they work for me. So again, all of this is my personal opinion. Some of it is my husband's opinion, although he will probably be contradicting me in the chat later on. So if you see Timisaurus on there, he's got as much, if not more, experience with long haul flights than I do, because he is Australian. We used to live in the UK. That is a 24-hour flight. It is currently a 16.5-hour flight from Dallas to Australia. So we have been doing this for decades, and we both have very different experiences. He also travels more for work than I do. So he tends to do more short haul hops than I do now, but we've both been traveling for, I guess 30 years long haul. So it's been a while. We have, things have changed a lot in the past couple decades, and there's some products out there now that have totally changed long haul flights. We'll get into that shortly. Advanced planning. This is actually really important, guys. Even if you travel frequently, you have to check with the transport authority before you go. Especially right now, things are changing because of COVID. But in the United States, it's the TSA. In other countries, it's other agencies that are involved in that. Check with them. Check what you're allowed to bring on a plane. Check what you have to take off when you're going through security. Do you have to remove your belt? Do you have to remove your shoes? Do you have to pull batteries out of your suitcases? All of these can change on a regular basis. In fact, they can change from week to week. So unless you're someone who obsessively follows travel blogs and you're getting notified the moment they've made a change in your country, definitely check a week before your flight, and then check again the day before your flight just to see if there are any changes. Like right now, with COVID, it's constantly changing. So some airlines are requiring that you have a rapid test at the airport. Some airports don't have it at the airport, but you're still required to have a rapid COVID test 48 hours before you fly. So some of it's going to be airline based and some of it's going to be airport security based. So you really need to know what you're in for before you get to the airport at all. Obviously, if you have special needs, as you guys know, I certainly do, I need mobility assistance. You need to check with your airline in advance. You need to notify them of what your needs are. And I will say, if you're a person who, maybe you don't usually need assistance, but airports are just difficult, or airline travel can be painful. So like my mom doesn't normally use any type of assistance, but I will always get her wheelchair assistance in an airport just because she has fairly severe arthritis. She's a little bit stubborn, so she won't use a cane or anything. But after a long flight, she's stiff and it's very painful, and I will get her assistance. You can now usually contact your airline without having to speak to them. You can go on the website with your little record locator and tell them what type of assistance you need. Certainly, if you need special meals, you have to tell them at least 24 hours in advance. And we'll talk about that later because sometimes they still mess it up. But definitely notify your airline at least 2 weeks ahead of time. Earlier is always better. They don't always let you notify them about meals, so just keep an eye on that. And certainly by the time, if you do an online check-in, I don't do an online check-in if I'm flying internationally with special needs. I go ahead, I go to the gate, I talk to the gate agent, I make sure everything's correct. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we're talking about in the airport. And we'll talk about this, actually February Japan Stories is all going to be about traveling with special needs to Japan. So we'll talk about some of this as far as the airline and airport issues, but also we'll talk about, accommodation and travel and things like that in Japan, because we have Josh Grisdale of Accessible Japan, who will be our guest in February. But if you guys have questions about that, again, just hit me up. I will be talking about it in depth in the future. I don't want to spend too much time on that now. Before you go, do check with your destination about whether you need a visa and like whether you need a visa in transit. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard people, even people who are experienced travelers, who just assumed that they didn't need a visa because they were going to stay in the country less than 24 hours or something. They were coming in, they had a connecting flight, they just wanted to leave the airport for a minute, and they couldn't because they would have required a visa and they hadn't applied for one in advance. So make sure you know what you're allowed to do and whether you need any paperwork, whether you have to bring documentation. Sometimes even if you're traveling on a visa waiver program, you have to have filled that out or paid a fee in advance. Sometimes if you're applying for a student visa, you have to bring certain paperwork to show to Customs and Border Patrol on your arrival. Make sure you know all of that before you pack anything. Also, certain countries, Japan in particular, requires you to show all of your prescription medication and your prescriptions or a note from your doctor as you arrive. So you're showing that to Customs and Border Patrol in the airport. So you need to know that because you don't want to be digging through your checked luggage to find this stuff. And if you don't have the doctor's note, you won't be allowed to bring it in with you. So these are all things you need to find out. Japan, in some cases, you have to have a special license for certain medication or a certain amount of medication. Check that out well in advance. Otherwise, the airport is not the place where you want to be running into trouble. They always tell you to arrive at least 2 hours before departure for an international flight. I really recommend 3, especially if you have any special needs and it's going to take any extra time. Now, you will, if you are getting wheelchair assist or some kind of mobility assistance, they will actually help you get through security. So that's kind of nice, but you can be waiting for them to show up to collect you for a very long time. So just because you might save a little bit of time in one aspect of it, definitely allow yourself much more time. And I just think it's safer in general. Sometimes you get to an airport and you're looking for a parking space and it takes you 45 minutes to find a place to park. So the last thing you want to do is to be rushed and stressed in the airport trying to catch that flight. Because that stress and that mindset and that adrenaline is going to, again, mess up your sleep and mess up your tranquility for this entire long haul flight. So extra time is always good when you can do it. And I also really recommend that you have a printed boarding pass. I know nowadays most airlines, you can have a boarding pass on your phone, but I have had my phone lock up for no reason while I was on the way to the airport. I couldn't get it to turn on. I couldn't get any kind of access. It was just a brick and I had to ask somebody, how do I fix it? And it was really like they changed it in the operating system. It was really complicated and I was really panicking. So I really recommend that you print it out at home if you can do that, or if not, at least have, written down or some kind of non-technological backup, your record locator, stick that in your passport, sticky note or something like that. So if you do get there and your phone's not working, they can still look up your record, make sure you can still get on your flight. They don't always need that if you have an unusual name like I do, but if you have a common name, they won't be able to find you just on your name alone. So you definitely need to know what your record locator is and print it out if you can. Some airlines will charge you to print it at the check-in desk, but often you can go to the gate agent and they'll print one for you and just say, hey, I think my phone might be running out of charge. Can you go ahead and print me? They have that little thermal printer where you get this little rolled up thing that looks like a boarding pass. And then you have to make sure you don't crease it because they scan them all now. Anyway, if they charge you to do it at any other stage, sometimes you can go to the gate and get it printed. But I really recommend that. As much as technology is amazing and fantastic, there are certain places you really want to have some kind of paper backup. Let me take a sip of water and then I will move to the next slide. You will see travel bloggers talking about what to wear all the time. I will give you a big tip. Most of these people are making commission off of travel-specific clothing. So take every advice with a grain of salt. Also, the old cliche that if you dress up and wear a suit or business attire, you're more likely to get upgraded to first class. Excuse me. That does not necessarily work. That is only going to apply if you have sort of like premium points on your airline and it's between you and someone else who has an equal status. Then your attire may get you an upgrade. But if you're like me and you're like, I don't have any points, there's no way I'm getting an upgrade, dress nicely. I really don't recommend that you wear something that is, your pajamas. Wear something that's appropriate for your destination, that's not going to offend people when you get off the plane, because certainly what is culturally acceptable in the United States is not culturally acceptable or may not be culturally acceptable at your destination. So wear something comfortable. I always wear something that's stretchy. So whether it's jersey knit, yoga pants, I wouldn't wear sweatpants necessarily unless they're really expensive ones. Those celebrity designer sweatpant look in the airport is a thing. But celebrities are already getting top treatment anyway. People are going to treat you the way you're dressed. So if you are dressed, nicely, I don't mean business attire, but you look presentable and you look like you're a decent person, then you're going to get a little bit better treatment than if you look like you literally rolled out of bed, haven't brushed your hair or haven't done anything and you just showed up at the airport. They're going to think that you don't care, so why should they care about you? But yeah, it's kind of stretch top and stretch bottom. In fact, I'll be honest, with the ladies out there, I do not wear an underwear or bra on the plane. I make sure that I have, like a sports bra or something that doesn't have wires that's going to be digging in. So you do want to be comfortable. You do want to be breathable, but you can still look quite nice. There are loads of full length, like maxi length jersey dresses that you can get online for $20, $25. So you can look fabulous and it's still super comfortable. I wear leggings underneath them so that I never have to worry about the position my legs may be in. We'll get into that a little bit later because I do all kinds of weird, like putting my legs cross-legged up in the seat, whatever's comfortable. But you don't want to have to worry about, showing something that you don't want to show if you have leggings on underneath the dress. Or you can also get very comfortable stretch trousers or the sort of like yoga pants that look a little bit nicer. Obviously, leggings are not pants, so I would wear a longer top, but you can look quite presentable in dark yoga pants as well. So I wouldn't fuss too much about it, but do look nice. I highly, 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 highly recommend point number 2. Flight socks and or compression leggings. The longer your flight, the higher your risk of developing deep vein thrombosis, which are blood clots in your legs. And then blood clots in your legs can migrate to the rest of your body. My father has had blood clots in his lungs. He has had a mini stroke in his brain from clots thrown in other parts of the body. So there are a lot of risk factors that would make you even more likely to have blood clots, such as if you're on birth control, if you're overweight, if you have a sedentary lifestyle. All of these are factors, but one of the biggest risk factors for a clot for deep vein thrombosis is just sitting down and being inactive. So a lot of people are now wearing compression socks just in the office if they don't have a chance to get up and walk around. But on a flight with the pressure changes, really, 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 guys, I know they're a little bit uncomfortable, but it's way better than risking having a blood clot while you're traveling or risking a blood clot at all. So personally, I wear both flight compression socks and compression leggings. Honestly, I find if you're like me and you have any kind of joint pain, the extra compression can actually feel better. It's really hard to get them on, but they're comfortable once they are on. Point number 2, wear shoes that are easy to remove, especially because you may have to remove your shoes when going through security. And you may feel comfortable removing your shoes on the plane, but you will always want to wear shoes to the bathroom, which is point 4. You may want to have just some travel slippers instead. If you do remove your shoes during the flight, remember, your feet will swell while you're on board. It may be difficult to get your feet back in them. So that's just another issue to bear in mind. Don't have particularly tight shoes, even if they're easy to remove, or keep them on the entire time. Otherwise, you may really struggle to get them back on. You'll notice I do have that little caveat about shoes that are easy to remove unless weight is an issue. Now, if you're like me and sometimes your baggage is really cutting it close to the weight limit, then sometimes you need to pull out those big, heavy, stompy boots and wear them on the flight because they're not going to weigh you and the clothes that you're wearing. But then that's difficult. I mean, obviously, if you're wearing Doc Martens or something and you've got to unlace them and relace them, it can be really tricky. That's a decision that you're going to have to make, how much extra hassle you want to deal with versus, how much you need to save the weight. Honestly, there's some people who, when they're overweight on their luggage, not overweight as people, but when their luggage is overweight, they'll just start pulling out the heavier clothes and put them on. I mean, no one's going to judge you for wearing, well, mentally they'll judge you, but legally they won't, for wearing like 5 and 6 layers of clothing. It looks dumb, but if that's what it takes to get your stuff, on board, maybe your carry-on is too big, you need to pull out that hoodie, put on a hoodie on top of a hoodie you've already got on, whatever it takes to be able to get your stuff on board and or checked in without having to pay extra fees. Is frequent flyer tricks people do all the time. You can look ridiculous, but sometimes looking ridiculous is, just not your priority. I still would recommend that you dress nicely if you can, but sometimes luggage is a real kicker. So again, I'm just reminding you, always wear shoes to the bathroom, and I don't mean just in the airport, I do mean on the flight as well, because liquids do splash around. You may think that that clear looking liquid on the floor is just things that splashed out from the sink, but do you really want to risk it? I don't think so. It's one thing flight attendants say all the time is they are completely disgusted by people who go to the bathroom just in their socks or with bare feet because they know how nasty those toilets get. No matter how clean they try to keep them, turbulent liquids together is a recipe for a mess. So back to things that I recommend wearing or not wearing. I recommend having minimal jewelry and makeup. Your makeup's going to wear off. You're going to have to reapply it. So if you do want to wear makeup, maybe have a little bit of makeup when you're getting on the flight and then apply it just before you get off the flight. I wouldn't worry about keeping your makeup on through the entire flight, especially if you want to sleep, maybe rubbing off the pillow and things like that. Jewelry also, especially if you have long hair, you can get your earrings, you can get your hair caught in your earrings. You don't want to be pickpocketed. I know it's not necessarily a problem in Japan, but in America and on the way to your destination, if you fall asleep on a plane, people can be trying to steal things from you. So I would just be safe about it. Certainly there is an advantage to wearing a ring and a wedding ring when you're going abroad. Especially if you're a lady traveling alone, you may want to have that big sign saying, guys, stay away, or creeps, stay away. But otherwise, I would keep it minimal as much as you can. I personally take a long coat or a warm wrap like what I have on. This is kind of like an open cardigan poncho thing. You can actually bring your own blanket, but I find it's easier to have a wrap or like a trench coat or something for extra layering. Now, yes, they usually will give you a blanket, on the airplane if you're going long enough, along in a flight. But one of the reasons why you want to wear all kinds of layers is you never know what the temperature is going to be like on the plane. Some are hot, some are cold, and you just want to be comfortable. You want to be able to put extra layers on if you're cold and take extra layers off if you're hot. Certain airlines seem to have different standards, but even within one airline, sometimes I find it can vary hugely. And especially right now that they're doing additional air filtering. Well, some airlines are doing additional air filtering. I realize that's probably going to affect the air conditioning as well, because if they're, I know like ANA is changing out the air on board every 3 minutes, and that air that's coming in from the outside, the fresh air, is very cold. So I imagine ANA, which is usually pretty warm, might be chillier while they're doing all of this extra filtration for COVID. Also remember that if you do have a long coat, warm wrap, or something like that that you're using as a blanket, do follow the regulations about make sure you buckle your safety belt over that coat. They need to be able to see your seatbelt, or they're going to wake you up until you put it back on. Or maybe even if you're not asleep, they're going to interrupt your entertainment. So make sure that if you are wearing some other garment as a blanket, again, seatbelt goes on over it. I'm saying this is an optional item. I'm going to go ahead and show this to you. Again, depending on where you're traveling, you may have real risks of people trying to steal your IDs, try to skim your IDs, so they don't even have to be close to it. So that's why I mentioned having an RFID blocking like wallet, or sometimes I have like a little sleeve for my passport. So you have to be aware, especially in airports, of people trying to take your things. So for physical things, I usually have some kind of garment or accessory. This one is a scarf. It just looks like a jersey knit t-shirt scarf, but let me see if I can show you. Here we go. I don't know if you can see on camera. It has a zipper, and you open this up and there's plenty of space to keep your passport, valuables, a little extra cash. I wouldn't put your whole ball in there because then it gets bulky and it's obvious. But your IDs, your credit cards, and especially your passport, you can keep them in there, and then you can wear this around your neck the entire time. You're less likely to be pickpocketed. You can also have the types of pouches that go underneath your clothing, but that can trip you up going through airport security, so you'd only be able to put those on after you cleared security. And then again, the RFID blockers for passports, credit, and debit cards, you may not know, but there are devices. Sorry, I'm just going to sort of generally wave around some cards here. Just trying to show you too much identifying information. If you're just carrying your cards like I do on the back of my phone most of the time, then people can actually have RFID chip readers that they only have to be within, I think, 10 feet of you, and they can be scanning the chips that are in the new chip style. So let me see if I can show you this without showing you any identifying information. These little chip things that are on your cards can actually be scanned by people several feet away. So that's why you need what's called an RFID blocker. A lot of wallets come with it now. There's RFID blocking fabric if you want to make your own. There's even little paper sleeves that block it. Your passports now have these chips in them as well. So make sure that no one's going to be trying to skim your identity information and, trying to commit identity theft or identity fraud on you while you're passing through an airport, because that is one of the most common places where people are trying to steal that. Again, either the physical items or just trying to get the digital data off of it. So those are actually new things in the last 5 years. So even if you've been a long-term traveler, if you were not aware of that, I really recommend that it's time to look into RFID blocking technology. And it's available most places. I mean, you can order it online, you can get it in travel supplies sections at big box stores. Again, you can make your own. It's fairly common. If worst case, they sell them at the airport, although everything at the airport is overpriced. Let's move on to more things what we're talking about in the airport and how to get through security. For me, this is the trickiest part of the entire airport experience, mostly because there's just so many steps involved now. How many of you guys remember the days when you just showed up? You didn't have to show your license. You just had a plane ticket. And then, you know, people who are taking you to the airport could walk up to the gate with you. You just checked your luggage at the front, or you gave it to the bellhop. You didn't have to do anything. And then you walked on a plane. Maybe you had to walk through a metal detector, and that was it. Wow. I am dating myself because that was a very, very long time ago. I remember being impressed that you had to walk through a metal detector in the UK, where certain parts of the US, you didn't have to go through a metal detector at all. So security has changed substantially in the last 25 years. And now there are so many rules and regulations. This is where I say, if you have special needs, if you have mobility issues, if it's difficult for you to lift things up and down, do ask for assistance. That's what they're there for. Also, top tip is apparently those trays at security are the most germ-filled locations in an entire airport. They never get cleaned. I have a friend who is a cleaner in an airport who will verify that. Nobody cleans those trays. They are so germy. So if you do have to touch them, make sure you sanitize everything, or have some disposable gloves with you while you're putting stuff through. That is really, if you're going to pick up some kind of, touch-borne virus or bacteria, especially bacteria, it could potentially be from those trays at security. So be very careful. While we're on the subject of being careful, you need to pack your carry-ons in the order that you will need to access things for security. Gone are the days when you'll pack your carry-on based on what you need in flight versus what you're just carrying on as an extra piece of luggage. Oh no, there are so many different items that you have to remove from their bags now. It's a long list. Again, you will have checked with your transport authority before you go, but nowadays it is, any electronic device bigger than a phone. And that can be a lot of different devices now. It can be, if you have cords and cables, have them tied up neatly because they will pull those out. Anything that might get confused as some type of an explosive device, they will want to see. So have it prepared, be able to pull it out in advance. Some airports will want all of your cords and cables already pulled out in a plastic bag. I know that's unusual, but some of them do. Or just be prepared to pull all of your cords and cables out. I really recommend, let me see if I have it here. It's usually in this desk somewhere. Of course, it's not here today. But, you don't want to have your cords and cables all loose and then tied up with each other. You want to have like your little Velcro cable ties, all of your ties to be, nice and secured. It's okay, that's a terrible job, but it's still better than having them loose and tangling up on each other. You want to have them secured so that they can pull out the entire pack. My husband's in IT. He's always traveling with travel gear, and every single time his bag usually gets checked to open up just because they can't tell what's going on in there. So be prepared to pull out every bit of electronics that you have. Usually you don't have to turn them on anymore, but again, check with the airport before you go. Some things are required to be turned on still. It varies a lot depending on what country you're flying into and out of. Obviously, liquids, we've had that restriction since about 2001. Your liquids usually have to be 100 milliliters, which is 3 fluid ounces or less, and they need to be in a quart-sized container, which is also approximately a liter-sized clear container. You can now buy reusable ones. You can use, disposable food storage ones, whatever, but you guys probably know the drill on that one now because it's been around for 19 years now. But did you know that as of about a year ago, they also want to see all the food items that you have in your carry-on? So every granola bar, every protein bar, every bag of chips, anything that you've got that you're taking onto the flight, they want to see that before, as you're going through security. So have all your food available to pull out for them. Again, this is why it can be so difficult to get things arranged to make it quicker to go through security. And then you've got to completely repack everything to know what you need on board in the airline and what you can put up in your overhead compartment. Know your rights for going through security, especially if you have special needs. So if I am incapable, not if, I am incapable of raising my arms over my head because I had shoulder injuries a few years ago. I cannot stand up still in one of those body scanners. I have the right to go through a metal detector and get pat down. They can't tell you otherwise. They can't refuse to let you go through, but you have to know your rights. You have to be polite with them. But it is important to know what you can and cannot insist on when you're going through security. Be prepared to remove whatever it is that they're asking you to remove. So it could be shoes. Always it's your coat. Sometimes it's a cardigan or a hoodie even. They usually want you to strip down to whatever is your, single outside presentable layer. I have knee braces that have metal in them. They usually want that removed as well. So just be prepared, know in advance, wear things that are easy to remove or not remove. Sometimes they're actually belts now that have no metal in them. They're just Velcro and elastic. You can usually get away with that. But, again, know in advance. You don't want to get caught out in this line while everyone's standing behind you glaring at you because you're that newbie who didn't know how to go through security. Finally, I would just recommend have a secure place to stash your ID and boarding pass. Often they'll let you keep that in your hand while you're going through, even a metal detector. But, if you can, they'll usually make you take off even a scarf. But if you can stash it so that no one's going to, if you've gotten kind of delayed waiting to walk through the security, the metal detector or the thing, no one's going to see your items that have come through. Sometimes the stuff going through X-ray comes out faster. No one's going to see your passport just sitting out there on top and try to steal it from you while you're still waiting to get through the line. So have a place. Could be the inside jacket pocket, could be sticking it in your purse or your carry-on, but make sure that your ID and boarding pass, especially if it's your passport, are secured in some way before you send it through the X-ray. So, I'm exhausted just talking about that. Security is always my biggest problem. If you guys have any questions, you want some advice about it, I'm happy to oblige. But yeah, it's the most important thing is to keep up to date on what the rules and regulations are and check for your airport, your airline, and your country, both of the country that you're leaving and the country that you are arriving at. These are all super important every time you fly. I don't care if you were just there a month ago, you should probably check again. Let's move. I'm going to have another sip of water. I'm so dry today, y'all. And we will move on to the next slide. After you are through security at the airport, it's actually pretty easy. Don't worry. This won't be as long as the discussion about security. Don't get too tempted by duty-free on your outbound journey. So I mean, you're at your home airport. Don't get super tempted by all of the duty-free stuff because honestly, duty-free just means you're not paying tax on it at the point of departure. But if you fly internationally and then bring all that stuff back, that is among your customs allowance and you may have to pay tax on it on the way back. So I always say, unless you're buying it as a gift to give to someone at your destination location, so, maybe like I have a friend who likes a particular type of whiskey. If I'm going to be seeing him on that trip, I can buy that whiskey duty-free at the airport and then make sure that I give it to him there and I don't try to bring it back home with me. Also, remember, if you're changing planes at any point, that's a liquid that's not allowed in your carry-on. So if you are changing from one airline to another, or even if you're just having to go through security, and collect your bags and then go back in, which often happens. You're flying internationally and then you have a connecting flight. Do remember that stuff has to fit into your checked luggage at that point or they're going to confiscate it. So really don't recommend buying liquids at all on your outbound flight unless you're definitely going to be landing in the airport you're going to, and then you're going to be using up that liquid or gifting that liquid before you try to come home. However, speaking of liquids, remember they haven't let you take liquids through security very often, although interestingly in Japan you can take clear water and they can test for it, but in America certainly you can't take water with you. Have empty water bottles, and I'm saying water bottles plural, because having one water bottle is enough to keep you hydrated on a 2 to 3 hour flight. But if you're on one of these 13 to 17 hour long flights going to Australia or Asia, you're going to need more than one extra water bottle because you will get so dehydrated, and dehydration is going to make you feel rotten after you arrive. So that's actually part of jet lag tips as well, but you need to stay hydrated. It is super important, and one extra bottle of water is not enough at all. The planes are super dry. They just suck the air, the moisture right out of your skin. They suck it like out of your mouth. You need to stay hydrated, and you need more than one spare water bottle. If you're worried about it being bulky, they have the kind that roll up quite small, and then you will probably use them at your destination as well. So having an extra water bottle is always something good while you're traveling anyway. Also, if you haven't prepared in advance, I mean, normally I do prepare in advance. I go to my grocery store, I buy an entire box of my favorite protein bars. But if you haven't, stock up on snacks or even a hot meal if necessary, especially if you have any type of restrictive diet. I know you did the right thing and you told the airline 24 hours in advance, but I have gotten there and they have not had the correct meal for me, and there's been nothing that I've been able to eat on a flight. And that was a flight to Australia, so 18 hours of no food except the food that I brought. It was horrible. So from then on, I have always made sure that I bring enough food with me to be able to eat any meals that I need, any snacks that I need. And if I haven't gotten enough of that before I get to the airport prices are annoying, but you definitely better safe than sorry, especially if you have any kind of food allergy, dietary restriction, religious restriction, anything like that. Stock up. So now you're headed to your gate. You will have, if you have special needs, you've already contacted the airline in advance, you've spoken to somebody when you're checking in with your luggage. Also speak to the person at the gate, especially if you need pre-boarding, if you need assistance getting to your seat, any of that, you're going to want to recheck with the gate agent. And also, sometimes they can give you a better seat if you're disabled. Certain seats are reserved on certain airlines, and sometimes you're not going to get upgraded to another classification. That's not going to happen at the gate. Not usually, unless the flight's been oversold. And again, you're one of those airline members and you've got all the points and like they just want to appease you. But the gate agent can say, if you want an aisle seat because you have to go to the bathroom often, or you want to sit closer to the front because it's difficult for you to walk back and forth, or you want to sit close to the bathroom, whatever. They can help you with that at that point usually, because there are certain seats that have been reserved, have been left open, sometimes for families with infants and things like that, and they have more authority right there at the gate to make some of those little minor changes for you. So if you do need anything like that, that is your last chance usually. Now, once you're on the plane, once you've gotten yourself, I usually pre-board, once you've gotten yourself to your seat, guys, I know you probably don't know about this, or probably wondering why I'm saying this, but be really, 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 really nice to your flight attendants. Kiss up to your flight attendants. Bring them snacks. I'm serious. Bring them a bag of fun-sized candy or little mini bags of chips or anything like that. And you may not see the benefit of it on that particular flight, but if you get a little note in your file because you're really nice, your treatment at that airline will be fantastic for the rest of your days traveling on that airline. So first off, flight attendants have very demanding jobs. They're there to keep you safe. It's a very important position, and sometimes their airlines just don't treat them as well as they should. So the better that you can be towards those flight attendants, the more smooth your experience is going to be. Now, sometimes they will give you little thank you gifts, like an extra soda or something on the flight, but it's just more important to keep harmony if you're a frequent traveler. Just be nice to them as much as possible, and the rewards will come in time. And again, it's always better to leave a good impression than to not leave an impression at all. And definitely don't leave a bad impression. But yeah, since I've learned that, I've noticed that, the flight attendants will help me on things maybe they're not supposed to help you with. Like, they're not really supposed to help lift things into the overhead cabin. But I definitely get that assistance from them after I've kind of kissed up to them a little. Again, as Missy says, worst case, it's good karma. It's just the right thing to do because it's, a very demanding job. And although you may think of them as people who deliver your meals, they are actually there to save your life in case of an emergency. So always a good idea to kiss up to them. Once you've gotten that out of the way, you're at your seat and you're ready to sit down, you got to stow your luggage away. Remove the items from your carry-ons that you need in flight. and put them in a smaller container. Now, there are some fancy in-flight organizers that you can buy that hang on the seat in front of you. They have little pockets on them. I haven't invested in one of those yet, but you know, whatever it is that you want, you can see here, this is my my legs on. This was actually the upgraded premium. It wasn't premium economy, but it was like economy plus. So this is the extra 6 inches of leg room, I'm saying this in quotation marks, for a flight from Dallas to Tokyo. And as you can see, that is my knees more or less where they would be straight down, and that's how far I could extend my foot. It was not even 60-degree angle. I could not extend my legs all the way, and I'm 5'4". But you can see that I have there on the left, that is my bag that I have kept out separately. It has my water bottle in it. It has my electronics in it. It has everything that I need in flight. We're going to be talking about the things that you need in flight later. But remember, you've probably had to reorganize your whole bag after you've gotten through security. You don't want to have to be getting up at any point to get into the overhead bin if you can help it. Now, another tip that I have is if you do have a second bag that you have to put in front of you, sorry, just looking at this, look at the plane before booking. Older planes have less space sometimes. It's absolutely true, although sometimes they'll change out the plane last minute, and it's even worse. Certainly check your seats, seat options, because there's several, like you can usually check on the airplane, the airline website itself, but also there are like seat advisor websites that will sometimes tell you which model of airplanes. Like in this case, you can see that it's a 777-200, which was not the same as the 777-480 or what. Oh, don't ask me because I am not a plane spotter. It was not the same plane that I was expecting. And so I had very, very limited leg room on a 15-hour flight. I was in so much pain. It was ridiculous. But one of the things that you do, if you do have to put things in your seat, under the seat in front of you for takeoff and landing, that doesn't mean they have to stay under the seat in front of you the entire time you're there. What you could do, what I always do, is I pull them immediately after we've gotten through the whole takeoff part, and I put it behind my legs. I can use it as a leg rest. If I'm in a bulkhead section where you don't have a seat in front of you, I can use it as a foot rest. I know people look at me funny. I kind of don't care. As long as I'm not putting my feet in someone else's space, like never put your feet on the seat in front of you. Don't try sticking your feet in between the two seats in front of you. That's all rude. But if you have bulkhead in front of you, I'm okay with sticking my feet on top of my own bag. You know, I don't care what people think about that. And again, that's why I often make sure that I have leggings on under a dress. So that if I do stick my feet on my own bag, I'm not worried about someone looking at my skirt or anything like that. That is something we will talk about later because there certainly are creeps on planes. So again, women sometimes have to be careful. But another issue, again, remove things from your carry-ons if you can, if you have the forethought to do this, which I don't always do. While you're putting things in that smaller bag or after you've sat down and you're still waiting for the plane to take off, take a list. Just make a little list of everything that you took out of your carry-on. Because speaking from personal experience, it's very easy to forget to put something back in when you're packing up after a long flight. I have left an iPad 2 times in a seat pocket in front of me. Fortunately, they were returned, but I certainly wouldn't count on that in this day and age. And in fact, now I have a Kindle that was a gift. In case I forget it, it's no big loss. But if you have a list, that means when you're packing up at the end of the flight, you will be able to have that list again, look through and check off to make sure you packed everything away that you'd gotten out to begin with. Now, again, all you've done at this point is you've taken your own stuff out of your carry-on bags, you put things in the overhead, you shove things under the seat. You haven't touched anything else yet, right? Because before you touch anything, I don't care if it's the overhead compartment latch, should be open when you first board, but if you have to touch it, don't touch it yet. You want to sanitize everything. Everything you can see, everything that is made of leather or plastic or metal, you want to sanitize it. I happen to carry Purell wipes, disposable wipes, not a big case of them. They're like the little, well, I don't have them here, but you know, they're just little packets. I open them up, I wipe everything down. You want to wipe down your tray table, the both sides of the tray table, the knobs. You want to wipe down the seat belt. You want to wipe down the armrest. You want to wipe down everything. Certainly the remote, if you're on a long haul flight that has like the in-flight entertainment, all the buttons on the entertainment system, wipe it all down with sanitizer. And guys, this is what I did before COVID. So now it's even more important, but just wipe it all down and then have your hand sanitizer clean up your hands after you're done. So I don't usually use those wipes. Yeah, the little air controllers on the top, those don't get cleaned very much either. Inside of the seat pocket, so where you see that little American Airlines safety card, they don't clean in there. Wipe the whole thing down inside and out before you put any of your stuff in there, before you touch anything that's in there. Don't look at the in-flight magazine unless you've wiped it down. So again, I carry two sanitizers with me. One is just a sanitizing sanitizer that is a disinfecting sanitizer, and then I carry a hand sanitizer that's going to be a little bit easier on your hands. I said, Missy says, bring a small trash bag to put in the seat pouch. That absolutely can work too. I tend to have a trash bag that I keep on the side, but I tend to sit in the window seat. So I have some extra little tricks because I make use of that weird little space that you get kind of as the wall slopes down, but your seats, anyway. That's another story. But certainly if you want to just keep your stuff in the trash bag so it's never touching the inside the seat pocket, that is a great tip too, depending on what you're putting in that seat pocket. I mean, avoid it if you can, but on a long haul flight, sometimes it's awkward. And then, so you've sanitized everything. Now you're going to sit down. You're going to arrange your pillows. Did I tell you pillows? I'm going to mention pillows again. I'm going to be showing you pillows again. You can bring on as many pillows as you want, people. And I bring a lot of them. Arrange all your pillows. Get yourself comfortable. Put your coat as your blanket over your lap. Obviously, only buckle in if you are in the window aisle or the window seat, or if everyone close to the window is already there. Don't buckle up until your whole row is ready if you're on the aisle, because you're just going to stand up and let more people in. I know it's wishful thinking to hope that there's going to be an empty seat there, but still, I wouldn't buckle up until after they close the doors to make sure that someone's there. I'd love that Missy falls on the aisle. I sit on the window. She and I'll be fine traveling. I don't know who gets the middle. But anyway, to me as an aisle person, and I'm a window person, and we just hope that no one shows up in the middle. But there are actually on some ANA flights, there are some 2 people rows. Like right by the bathroom, there's a row that's just got 2 seats in it. So you can have one window and one aisle and you're good. So that's again, knowing your airline before you pick your seat, or knowing your airplane before you pick your seat. Anyway, you got everything arranged. You're ready to go. Remember, you can hold things on your lap during takeoff and landing. So again, if maybe you didn't want to put stuff into the seat pocket, but you have a small bag, you have a purse, messenger bag, something like that, you can hold that in your lap. You can hold your water bottle on your lap, your pillows in your lap, as long as it's secured in some way. So, there are, how you want to do it is going to be very individualized, but there are certainly ways around the whole tricky issue having to shove everything under the seat in front of you before you take off. Let's see what we're going to move on to next. In-flight tips. This is what you guys really want, right? I know we're already an hour in, and I'm only just now getting to this, but I promise we're actually getting kind of near the end of it, because most of it was in the planning, right? Here are some of the weird tips that I have learned over the past nearly 30 years of travel. 1, I get in-flight headaches. So the pressure changes as you go up and down. If you have any kind of sinus problems, it can give you a sinus headache. Now, I actually get pressure change pain from joints as well. We'll be talking about joint pain next, but specifically sinuses. If you're getting pain, in your cheeks, behind your eyes, or in your ears, this is something a nurse recommended to me: Afrin or a spray decongestant. Now, I don't normally recommend these, especially if you have allergies. This is not something you want to use long term, because your body can get quite used to it, and you don't want to develop. It's not an addiction, that would be the wrong thing, but it's a dependency. So Afrin and some of these other spray decongestants, you don't want to use long term if you have allergies or sinus problems. But certainly I have a bottle with me that I use. It's when you have sat in your seat and you're buckled in, before you take off, before the plane actually, it could be while you're taxiing, towards, it takes forever to actually get to the runway, go ahead and spray Afrin in both your nostrils, and that will help clear out everything so that as you're going up in the air, you're going to have less ear pain, face pain, all of any type of sinus pressure pain will be reduced. Now, it may not take it all away, but it's still better than what you may otherwise have. And again, I'm going to go ahead and skip to the third point here that probably should have been there. If you have problems with your ears during the pressure changes at takeoff and landing, some of us already know how to pop our ears just by swallowing or moving your jaw in a certain way. If you're not like that, have something to chew on. It doesn't have to be gum. It can be any food. Or it's literally the act of chewing and sometimes the act of swallowing that'll help clear your ears and pop your ears. If that is totally not in the ballpark, there are a special type of earplug called ear planes. Now, these do not actually plug any sound, but they have certain holes in them. You pop them in your ears, there's a hole that goes through it, and that helps stabilize the ear pressure. So the air pressure in your ears in takeoff and landing. After you've been in the air for about 20 minutes, you can go ahead and remove them, but that way you don't have to pop your ears, and it'll reduce some of the pain if you have a lot of sensitivity, especially people who have had a history of chronic ear infections may have a lot of problem with that. But yeah, that's a new device. I say new, it's probably been around about 10 years now. I have accidentally bought these thinking they were sound blocking earplugs, which they're not, but certainly ear planes are pressure adjusting earplugs. Go back to the topic of pain. Now, things that I do, again, while I'm sitting in my seat and we're waiting for the plane to take off, I make sure that's when I put on I usually use heat patches. So I use Thermacare brand. Thermacare is, you have to open it up and let it be exposed to the air. It causes a chemical reaction and they heat up. One of the questions that I got from you guys on Instagram was how to deal with back and neck pain. So, your pillows, some kind of lumbar pillow that you can put behind your back. They make them in memory foam as well. But also I use a heat, or I use a lidocaine patch. This is Salonpa. Although this is made in Japan, you cannot buy it there, oddly enough, because this is 4% lidocaine, and in Japan they can only sell 2% lidocaine. So buy it in your country of origin if you have it. They may not have this particular brand, but over-the-counter lidocaine patch, if that's something that you can use, that can help with the pain. You can leave these on, I think, 12 hours. And certainly Thermacare heat patches you can leave on for 12. So you also, if you're in Japan and they have all kinds of heat and cold patches that just stick on, obviously if you have adhesive allergies, that's an issue. Thermacare back ones have Velcro, but some of the Thermacare neck wraps do have adhesive. So you just may have to find what works for you. If none of those work, here's an old school way to do it. You have to wait until after the flight's taken off. But carry an old-fashioned hot water bottle and ask your flight attendant to fill it with hot water. They still do it. They probably haven't gotten that request in many, many years, but they will still do that for you. So my recommendations for pain are pillows and support. We'll talk, when we talk about items, there are some specific items that I recommend, but get your body as comfortable as you possibly can. I travel with at least 4 pillows because that's the only way I can get, my joints tend to dislocate. It's the only way I can stay stable and get any kind of sleep whatsoever. And I have the heat patches. I have pain creams. I have my own medications with me, so I can take my pain medications in flight. And then you also need to try to move around as much as possible. We'll get to that in a minute. If you have motion sickness, obviously consult with your doctor first, because what you may be able to take, whether you can take medication for it or just heat acupressure, is going to depend on, other elements in your body and other medications you may be taking. They do have acupressure bands that are like little Velcro wristbands that put pressure right at the spot on your wrist. You usually wear them on both sides. You may just need a medication like Dramamine, and that helps with the actual motion sickness and the ear problems. If you can't take that, maybe you can take anti-nausea medication. And if all that fails, have peppermint or ginger candy or peppermint or ginger tea bags. My husband often says, and he often says, even if he's having a toothache, which I'm not sure if this works, but even if you don't trust the hot water, which I kind of recommend, it's fine in your hot water bottle. I wouldn't necessarily drink it. But if you have peppermint tea, you can just moisten it with some cold water and put it in your mouth and kind of suck on it if you don't have peppermint candy. Same with ginger tea, that type of thing. Those can help with the nausea symptoms. Unfortunately, that is never going to be as effective as some of the others. But if you really can't, if the acupressure doesn't work for you and you can't take any of the other medications, at least it kind of helps prevent you from throwing up on the plane. And then finally, on this slide, move your body as much as you can. Remember, you do not have to get up. In fact, for people who are like, oh no, I'm going to stand up every single hour and I'm going to stretch and I'm going to do that. Remember, there's people around you. You don't want to annoy them. You certainly, if you're not on the aisle seat, you don't want to be climbing over people every single hour. They're trying to sleep or they're trying to watch movies, and look up exercises to do in the airplane. There are tons of websites out there, just how to stretch forward, how to move your arms. There's even a little device. I don't have one, so I can't show you, but it's like a little inflatable foot thing where you're just squishing your feet up and down on this little inflatable thing, gives you a little bit of resistance pressure, and it helps keep your legs moving a little. The more you can circulate your body, the less likely you're to get blood clots, and also the less likely you are to have stiffness and arthritis pain. Unfortunately for me, it doesn't matter how many of these things I do, I still feel horrible the next day, but at least it is better. And I'm going to talk about the flight hammock next, because, well, not next, in the travel section, because that has been great for me to be able to change the position of my legs. But let's move to the tips next. Unless you're a really, really good sleeper, like you can sleep through anything, sound doesn't bother you, light doesn't bother you, smells don't bother you, go with the time settings on the airplane. Eat when they're giving you food. I know you think, or you may think, that it's just for their own convenience when they're going to feed you or when they're going to give you drinks, but there actually are sleep scientists and psychologists that help airlines determine what the best timing is to optimize your flight experience. So don't necessarily try to fight it unless you are really good at sleep. If you're really great at sleeping and you can sleep the whole time, or you can go ahead and sleep and then wake up at whatever morning would be in your destination, oh, that's great. I mean, I envy you. That's fantastic. But if you're not, if you're like me, you're a light sleeper, or you're not comfortable in planes, or your body just won't sleep on command, whatever, don't try to fight the dark time and light time that they have on the airplane. Just go ahead and work with it. The dark time is okay. You can be reading, on a device or doing things, watching your in-flight entertainment, whatever. But, try to be getting your sleep in when they've turned the lights off. Try to be staying awake when they've got the lights on, because they are doing that for a reason. And we'll get into more of that when we talk about the jet lag section. The exception to that rule, though, is water and snacks. They are not going to give you enough to drink. They're just not. You can request it, but even then, usually they're bringing you like a tiny little cup of water. That's why I recommend you have at least 2 bottles of water with you, if not more. And sometimes you can request that they refill your whole water bottle when they come around, if you're that thirsty and dehydrated. I am really prone to dehydration, y'all, as you can tell by me constantly sipping down. Yeah, I should say this is for the Texas Shinkansen, which is coming in like 4 years. So remember that these tips do apply to long-haul train travel as well. We just don't have that in the United States a whole lot. My experience with Amtrak were not something I would recommend, but that's in the store. So yeah, all of these tips for long-haul flights, a lot of them apply to long-haul trains too. But again, don't only eat or only sleep when they are bringing you things. Certainly, I'll mention this in the jet lag section in particular. There are not a lot of things that you can do in advance before you travel to help you with jet lag. Unless you can really completely rearrange your life for a few days before you travel. And even then it's going to get interrupted on the flight. But what you can do is break up your meal times so that you're not eating big meals 3 times a day, but you're eating smaller meals 5 to 6 times a day. And certainly continuing that, doing that for a few days before you leave, but continue that on the plane. Or even if you couldn't start before you leave, start on the plane. Make sure you're having snacks every couple of hours that you're awake. Don't wake yourself up for it. Don't set an alarm. But if you're awake, have a little bit of something to eat every 3 to 4 hours. It keeps your blood sugar more consistent, but also it'll help your body clock reset And it's going to be a big help when we get to the jet lag issue. So other than that, go with what they're telling you to do on the flight as far as what time to wake up and that kind of thing. I really recommend trying to sleep if possible if your flight is over 6 hours long, or if your flight leaves late night where you are and arrives early morning at your destination, even if it's a short flight. Like I remember, I used to live in the UK. My parents live in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. It's a 6-hour flight. It's crossing 5 time zones. By the time they feed you dinner and then they wake you up to have breakfast, you've only got about 3 hours in there to sleep. I'm not one of those people who can sleep through the meals and all the banging and clanging of the meal service. You're still going to want to get that nap if you can. So if you possibly can, do try to sleep. If you want to use melatonin to help you with jet lag, you can start that on the plane. If you have sleep aids, that is questionable whether you want to use on the plane. The risk is not only that you can sleep aids work differently in a low oxygen environment and a high altitude environment, so you can be even more sedated than you want to be, but also that can leave you a potential target for creeps and gropers or pickpockets or other unwanted attention on the flight. So I will say, be careful when using anything that is going to dull your senses unnaturally. So melatonin won't do that. Melatonin will just help you sleep at a different time than normal. But sleep aids or even anti-anxiety medication can put you at risk depending on the flight. Now, that's never happened to me personally, but I've heard plenty of stories from other women that I would just be careful about that. I'm now looking back at the chat. Raina says, agreed, I truly feel that sleeping only a couple of hours in an overnight flight is a key to avoid struggling too much the day after. I mean, if you can get any sleep at all, that's going to help. If you can get a whole night's sleep, good for you. I'm not one of those people. But getting some sleep is really going to help if you absolutely can. Next point, try to avoid alcohol because it is dehydrating. If you really need it, because it helps with your pain or it helps with your anxiety, have it with your meal. Make sure you're having even more water. But you don't want to be getting intoxicated, again, for the same reasons as sleep aids. You don't want to be unable to have your normal reactions, and you don't want to get drier. I struggle with dehydrated skin at the best of times and live in Texas where we're constantly having the moisture sucked out of our skin. But the plains are so dry, you're going to come out looking parched and old. And on that note, you're going to come out looking parched and old. Do not apply your skincare routines on the flight. I know it's super popular among beauty influencers on Instagram. They're doing their sheet masks and they're putting on their hyaluronic acid and they're putting on their Sunday Riley jet lag balm. They're doing all that on the flight, usually up in first class because they're influencers. Don't do that. Every dermatologist has spoken out about that. Estheticians have spoken out about that. Says actually that is completely counterproductive because all these sheet masks that have humectants in them, when you're on ground level, those humectants are going to pull moisture from the air and help deliver it into your skin. However, when you're up in a plane where the air is incredibly dry, I mean, we're talking 5 to 10% humidity, whereas on the ground level, you usually a minimum of 35%, up to 50 or 60% is normal inside a household. When it's only 5 to 10%, it's going to be sucking the moisture out of your skin into the sheet mask or into your moisturizer. So it is completely counterproductive. Don't do it. Don't be doing skincare routines on board, but do be reapplying your sunscreen and your lip balm. So remember, I said when you're wearing things on the plane, wear lots of sunscreen. You are up in the air where you are closer to the sun and the UV rays can bounce around inside of an airplane. So even if you aren't right by the window or you have your window closed, there is a certain amount of UV transfer, UVB in particular transfer. So you can get a sunburn on an airplane. So do wear sunscreen, even if you don't normally wear sunscreen, do wear it and do reapply it. Obviously, you don't have to do it all night, but certainly when it is daylight outside the plane, make sure you've got full coverage of sunscreen on. That's another reason why I recommend only wearing minimal makeup, because you want to really take care of the sunscreen. And also do keep reapplying lip balm. That is one thing, especially a very occlusive lip balm, something made with like petroleum jelly or shea butter or something like that. That's going to help keep the moisture in your lips. Now, if you're really worried about drying out, do your skincare before you go. You can even do it in the airport if you want. I mean, it looks weird, but hey, whatever. You can do it in the airport and then have really thick, occlusive moisturizer on. You can even put Vaseline on, as long as you've got some kind of hydration underneath it. You can also use a water mist while you're on the flight. That's okay. You could, but don't be putting on your serums and your sheet mask. Don't be doing any of that. Okay, a little bit of mist, a little bit of lip balm. That's all you can really do. Anything else would be counterproductive. Now, you can get off the plane and immediately run to the bathroom and do your whole skincare routine again once you've gotten there. But don't do it up in the air, please. Flight attendants will tell you the same thing. Dermatologists will tell you that. It's trendy, but it's not good for your skin. Okay, now we're on to my final sort of like flight tips. I can't believe it's taken so long, but I did have a lot to say. Useful items to have in flight. I have mentioned most of these already, so we won't have to take a whole lot of time. Obviously, hand sanitizer is your best friend traveling nowadays, and I mean post-COVID as well. Hand sanitizer. More people get sick on planes and in airports than anywhere else. So your chance of catching a cold or a flu or any kind of virus or even bacteria. So many people in airplanes do not wash their hands after using a toilet. So hand sanitizer, use it before you touch any food, use it after you go to the restroom. I don't care if it's the airport restroom. I don't care if you wash your hands with soap. Still use hand sanitizer, hand sanitizer, hand sanitizer, hand sanitizer. Don't touch your face unless you've used hand sanitizer, the whole thing. Now, pillows. Talk briefly about pillows. I recommend having a neck pillow of some kind, or like the ostrich pillow, which you kind of put your whole head in. There are so many different types of neck pillows. I can't even begin to explain them all. There are blogs that will review them, recommend them, but sometimes what you need is very personalized. And if you have unusual joint issues, get an inflatable one, because then you can inflate it to just the right firmness for you. As you can tell, mine actually split in the last trip. I need to sew that back up. I recommend a lumbar pillow. This is not the one I usually take, but it's something about this size, about the size of my face, and it's square. You put that behind your back. This is about the same size of the pillow that they will give you on the plane. So if you really don't have that one, try to take 2 of the ones that they give you on the plane, because those are very thin, and put those in the small of your back. This one is the Ushikon pillow. So if you attend Ushikon, then you can see she has a whole different range of pillows. This one happens to be the mascot, but she also does a range of other anime and kawaii characters. So this is a great travel size pillow. Then sometimes I get a Daiso. I just get a Billo pillow and I sit on it. I also have a cushion that goes with my wheelchair. And when I'm sitting on it right now, so I'm not going to pull it out for you, but I have a memory foam cushion specifically for sitting in that has a little cutout for the sciatic notch. I throw that sucker down underneath my rear end because it's uncomfortable. But yeah, take as many pillows as you want. They will not stop you taking them on the plane. But you may want inflatable pillows. You may want memory foam pillows. Just try them out as best you can before you go. Take them in the car on a road trip, on a test drive. Also remember your blanket, your shawl, your coat. My husband also recommends, if you are someone who does not have much hair, a hat, especially if you don't like the cold air, like directly beaming on your head. He's right. There were about 4 years when I couldn't have hair for medical reasons, and I always had a beanie with me on the flight. Sometimes you just want a hat because your hair is going to get messed up and you want to look a little better when you get off the flight. So whatever, I just recommend that you consider that for what you bring with you on the flight. Face masks. Obviously, you'll have to take them off for eating or drinking. Right now, they're required, but I was wearing them in airports long before COVID happened, just because I have decreased immune system. So have them with you. Guys, we know you've all got them now. I keep saying guys. That's such a horribly gendered word. People, I know you all have them now, so take them with you when you fly. I even have like little carrying cases for mine, so I could take them off and not leave them on the dirty tray table. Now, this next thing is the thing that I want to tell you that has changed the game for me completely. This is called a flight hammock. These are $12 to $20, depending on which brand you get. Some of them have memory foam in them. Some of them are just quilted. This hangs on the tray table in front of your seat. So you open out the tray table, you put the cord behind it, you can close the tray table back up, and then you just have this hanging space underneath the seat in front of you. What this means is that not only can you have more of the kind of reclining your feet out experience without having that kind of weird angle that may exacerbate your back, if that isn't necessarily good for you long term, at least it has a different spot that you can put your feet. I have to be constantly moving the location of my legs, the angle of my knees, and this gives me just more options. So sometimes I can put it up, have my knees a little bit more bent if I have my feet stuck in them. Like my feet are on top of the hammock as opposed to my legs going through. Sometimes I put my legs through. Sometimes I put my legs down on the floor, and I just keep shifting around between them all. It helps reduce the stiffness. Again, this goes back to the whole keeping your body moving. Also, part of that is not staying in the same position, even if you are just sitting. You need to be moving as much as you can. Because I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I'm old. I get stiff, and especially in an uncomfortable environment, it just makes things even worse. This flight hammock, y'all may think it's gimmicky, but I swear it has made so much of a difference in my life. I will not travel without it. Even on like a little 1-hour flight, I'll still take my flight hammock with me. Other useful things to have in flight would be your hygiene items, whatever you want to do to freshen up before landing. You know, you've been in there, maybe you've been sweating, maybe you've just been sleeping. You know, make sure you take care of your teeth, reapply deodorant, brush your hair, reapply your makeup, whatever. Just please don't wear scented things or perfumes. Because people with allergies are trapped on a small middle cylinder of the air with you, and it can really cause problems for people. So I really, even if it's like dry shampoo or something, please try to avoid anything scented, because I'm one of those people that will have an asthma attack if I'm sitting next to you. Please remember to bring your medications with you. It's always tricky if you have a medication that has to be taken at a certain time every day, certainly like birth control pills where you only have a 2-hour window. It's difficult to shift that when you're jet lagging or you're trying to, you know, adjust to a new time zone, I should say. But make sure you have it with you. I carry a little small pill box like this. I keep my nightly I keep my pain medication in it, always have the pill bottles, the prescription information. If it's prescription, have the pill bottles with you in your carry-on. You should always keep your medications with you in your carry-on anyway. But just to grab inside the flight, I put whatever doses I need during the flight itself into a little box, so I'm not having to fiddle with the pill bottles in the middle of the flight, sometimes dropping them, they roll under the seat, blah, blah, blah. But I'll have my nighttime medications, sometimes my morning medications, and then whatever else I need in a little box like this. Obviously, you can get these at Daiso, which is where I get all mine, and they're adorable. They change all the time. So every time I go on Daiso, they've got a different design. So I have about 12 of them now. It's pretty fun. And also, as my husband recommends, first aid if you are prone to bleeding or picking at scabs or getting cuts. He just kind of can scratch himself on anything. I don't know. He's just genetically prone to getting scratches, even if the cat's not there. But, you know, especially if you have adhesive allergies and there's only certain brands you can take, that's even more important to always have your first aid items with you. Now, remember, if you do have any type of like first aid cream, that has to go into your liquids and creams when you're going through security. But just Band-Aids and things, there's nothing special that you have to do. Other useful items in flight. Yes, this was a screenshot of the last flight that I took from Tokyo back to the United States last November, where I got to watch an anime film. And it was a brand new release. It did have the English subtitles, and I cried through the entire thing. I was sitting on a plane next to a Japanese guy who was trying to sleep, and I was just sobbing. That movie is amazing. Highly recommend it. I won't say any more because otherwise I'll spoil it. But yeah, be prepared to cry. But other useful in-flight items I have already mentioned. Remember, if you have pain, you may need pain patches like lidocaine patches or heat or cold patches, whatever it is that makes your body feel more comfortable. Maybe you need to switch them out in the middle. You can go to the restroom at any point in time. Remember, there's usually a disabled toilet and they'll have a little bit more space. Don't take it unless you really need it. But if you do, like sometimes I have to remove my leggings to change the pain patches that are on my knees or on my back. You need a little bit extra space. There's usually a little bit more, maybe only like 6 or 8 inches, but a little bit more space in the disabled toilets on your airplane. Sometimes you may want a clip or a case for your eyeglasses. I obviously have glasses all the time. Often I'll just tuck them into my shirt, but then I find I'm accidentally touching them and getting, just grease all over them. So you may want to have your eyeglass case, or you may want to have like one of the little clips that you can put on, just so that you don't lose them. Because honestly, dropping them on the plane when you can't see is always a bummer. So make sure you know where you're going to put your glasses if you need to take them off to sleep. I highly recommend an eye mask, and this is the latest technology that I purchased. I only got this on Black Friday. You want an eye mask, if you can, that has these removable cups. Now, what's cool about these removable cups is you can have exactly the right distance so that there's no pressure on your eyeballs and there's no pressure on your nose, and this creates, something like a 99.9% blackout seal. So, I mean, you want to not see anything. These are actually not sold specifically for travel. They're sold for people who sleep better in complete blackout conditions. But they also have some that like have silk on them, which can be a little bit nicer for if you have crow's feet, things like that. And they have some that have hot and cold cups. So if you are prone to allergies and or migraines, and you find that you are soothed by having heatable cups or cooling cups, they're all interchangeable. So this particular brand is called Manta Sleep. There are other brands available, and they're not very expensive. I think this was about $25, which is a lot for an eye mask, but considering the amount of comfort that it has, I totally think it's worth it. Earplugs. I'll talk quickly about earplugs. I recommend the memory foam kind. You can they have different ratings of how many decibels that they will block out. So unfortunately, I have really tiny ear canals. So these are my new earbuds. So you may notice, see, no more big clamshells. It took me a long time to find some that fit in my tiny little ears. And again, I had problems finding tiny little earplugs. Now, these are, unfortunately, called the For Women version. But they are smaller. Sometimes they have children's versions, if that's, if like you can't find a women's version. I don't know why they call it For Women. That's stupid. But yeah, it's a pink package, and it says it's, the earplugs for women. But these twist down really tiny. They're memory foam. You pop them in your ear. They expand to fill all the gaps in your ear, and they will help block some of the sound. Now, unfortunately, these For Women's ones only block 30 decibels worth of sound. You can buy memory foam pairs of earplugs that block up to 60 decibels worth of sound, which is still not going to be all the sound, and certainly not on a plane. But, it's better than just hearing the ambient sound. Now, if you prefer to just have noise canceling headphones or earbuds, that's great, but on a long flight, you may run out of charge on them. That's my only concern with relying on those. But let's go ahead and get into the devices section. I mean, obviously, you guys probably already know your devices, your phone, your e-reader if you don't have a tablet, your noise canceling headphones. I prefer the clamshell version, so I can have a clamshell on top of my earplugs. Oh, can I say anything? Earplugs, clamshell on top of it. I find that's a little bit extra noise protection. I don't leave the clamshell necessarily on with the noise canceling, but if I am watching some kind of entertainment, I definitely will have the noise canceling on, because it's just loud inside of a plane. You will want, I know some airlines say that they have plugs and power adapters, but the number of times that they have been broken when I'm trying to travel is almost the same number of times that I've tried to travel. So I do not rely on them. I get a big old power bank. I recommend the type that can charge all your different devices. So maybe it's just got a USB out. Some of them even have like USB-C to USB-C. They can charge a laptop. Do be careful if you're flying to China in particular, because they'll only let you have like a 10,000 hertz power bank. The one that I travel with, should have brought it with me. It is a big old honkin' sucker. It is heavy, but it charges my camera and my phone and my iPad all at the same time. And it'll charge a laptop 5 times. It has that much charge, but it is 27,000 watts or whatever it is. So if I were to take that into China, they would confiscate it and not let me have it back. Fortunately, I haven't gone to China, so I haven't had to worry about that. But that is just one thing to know. Japan doesn't have any restrictions. I haven't found any other countries that have that type of restriction. But you really want your power bank and your power cords. Do not trust, no matter how the airline says that they've got all the plugs, don't trust that they're working. And certainly I wouldn't trust plugging in my phone into the USB of the little entertainment system, because your phone might get hacked as well. It's fine if it's something that's only going to draw power, like your headphones or something like that. But I certainly, anything that has sensitive information, I would never plug it into someone else's USB, even if it's just a charge. Now, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, what do I do when I'm bored? I don't just want to watch the in-flight entertainment. The only real answer I have for you is to bring as many different options as you can. I personally carry with me books, including a physical copy of a book in case I run out of power. You know, some of these flights to Australia are very long. Sometimes it has taken me, like if I was going from North Carolina all the way to Australia, long story as to why I was having to do that, but it would take me 39 hours from door to door. Well, actually from airport to airport, and then usually, you know, the extra 2 hours before you go, and then, you know, an hour and a half in the airport up to my in-laws' house. It can take me 48 hours to travel from my parents' house to my in-laws' house. I don't care how good your power brick is. Certainly back then, they did not last that long at all. So have a good old-fashioned book if you can stand the weight of it. But I always have ebooks, I have magazines, I have e-magazines, I have video downloads. Did you know that Amazon Prime and Netflix, Funimation, and I believe now Crunchyroll, I haven't tested it yet, but they've said that it's coming soon. You can download episodes so that you have all kinds of your own media to watch. Obviously, if you have purchased media from somewhere else and it's in a .mp4 or .mov format, I'm not suggesting that you go out and get pirated things, but if you have it, certainly I buy things off of Interweave Press that are craft videos, so they're legitimate purchased versions of it. You can put that on your device as well. Sometimes I will bring a laptop with me. Most of the time I don't anymore, because I have a very swanky tablet now that has a keyboard and all that. So I do not actually travel with my laptop much anymore. But this, I still have like 256 gigs of storage space. You can get a lot of movies on there, even though a movie is about 4 to 5 gigs of space, but you still get a lot. And I download my maximum amount on Netflix, on Hulu, or whatever, all my things. I'll go look and see how much I can download and just download the maximum of it. I also will always have some kind of music, and I'll have some kind of audiobook. I find if I can't sleep, I like to listen to spoken word rather than music. You may like music, whatever, but sometimes I just want to close my eyes. If I can't sleep, you can still rest and relax your body by closing your eyes and just listening to something. So that is a top tip I have for those of you who just can't get any sleep on a plane, can't sleep sitting up, whatever. More you can shut down your body and shut down your senses, but keep your brain occupied by listening to something. I also recommend having information on your destination. You know, a guidebook maybe. If I have some over here, you guys are always seeing the guidebooks that I recommend, but you know, a guidebook, some PDFs that you've saved. You know, you can save websites in PDF form, have them on your phone, have them in your tablet, anything like that. And my husband always recommends a notebook in case he wants to write something down. I don't do that, but you know, whatever it is, if you have creative inspiration, however you might want to capture that, if you're a handwriting type person, then have those types of tools with you. I don't bring knitting on the plane anymore just because I find it's a bit awkward. I do sometimes bring crochet because you not usually get in trouble with crochet hooks. You sometimes get in trouble with knitting needles, although that's dumb. And there are certain sizes about, certain restrictions about the size of scissors you can bring on. So often embroidery, you're okay. Have a handcraft if that's the kind of thing that you do. Make sure it's something that fits in a really small, like a Ziploc bag. It's not time to be bringing the Afghan that you're working on. This is definitely like hat size or smaller. But yeah, just basically have as much different entertainment as possible. Have some that's tactile, have some that's audio only, have some that's reading, have some that's video. Obviously, you know, if you can be entertained by the stuff that comes on the entertainment series on the plane, like this movie that's still up there, that's great. I mean, if you can do that to keep yourself occupied, it'll help pass the time faster. Because these are, yeah, Misty, that movie absolutely killed me. Like I said, I was in public. I didn't care. I was just bawling. It was so good, y'all. Don't get us wrong. It was so good, but very, very emotional. And then the last thing I have for useful items to have in flight, remember your food and drink. You can go buy a pizza at the airport and bring it on with you and eat it halfway through your flight. You know, people may not like the fact that they can smell it, but at this point, you know, as long as you're not causing them an allergic reaction, I kind of don't care about that. Remember that any fresh food has to be consumed or disposed of. So only bring on things like fruit if you're definitely going to eat them on the flight. Otherwise, you have to throw them away at the end. But you can usually take protein bars, candy, things like that. You can't usually take any meat items, even if it's jerky, but, you know, nuts, stuff like that. You can usually, if you don't finish it on the flight, you can go ahead and take that with you into the, you know, after you've landed in the airport. Now, near the end of your flight, near the end of the presentation too, have a checklist of items that you kept out. Remember, you made that checklist back when we were boarding so that you don't leave your expensive stuff in the seat pocket or on the floor. Honestly, if possible, go ahead and remind yourself, add to that list every time you do pull something out. If you go get your bag later and pull something out, add that to the checklist. If you're not that, you know, organized, which I'm not, just wait until everyone else in your aisle has left the plane, if you don't have a connecting flight, and just search everything. Search the aisle behind you. I've had water bottles rolled 2 aisles back. You know, it can be a bit awkward on a plane to make sure you find all your stuff. But even if you're willing to let some of that stuff go, what you really need to have before you land is prepare everything you need for Customs and Border Patrol. So you may have a little card to fill out in flight. A lot of countries have done away with that, so now it's electronic. Or maybe they've given you a website and you have to fill it all out on your phone or tablet. But make sure that you have the address where you're staying that night, because I have not yet been to any country that hasn't asked me that. They want to make sure that you have accommodation that is already lined up and you're not going to be sleeping in the airport. So you need that. You may need to show certain, like I said at the beginning, certain documentation and customs, have that all ready to go. So when you're repacking your carry-on, it's the third time you're repacking your carry-on. When you're putting everything back in at the end of the flight, make sure that you keep out the stuff that you need to show Customs and Border Patrol. So if you need to show them your prescription medications, and have a pen. You never know when you need a pen, but usually in the entire Customs Border Patrol process, it's not 100% anymore, but it's still about 75% chance that you're going to need some kind of pen at some point. And again, you're going to want your own pen. You're not going to want to borrow someone else's and sanitize it. So that is your flight. Now, I am going to take a sip of water. I'm going to let the director run the giveaway link at the bottom of the screen. And then in just a minute, we will move on to my jet lag tips. As Timmy said, yeah, with COVID in some countries, you can get fined if you give them the wrong address. They need to know where you're staying, especially if they require you to quarantine. It is super important. So this is not something that you can just fake and make up. Again, this is all the things that you need to find out in advance, but it is used to be, they just kind of wanted to make sure that you had a hotel name and they didn't check whether you had a reservation. Now they will, absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of water. Okay, thank you for that little break. I appreciate that. I'm so dry today. Okay, this is my last slide, guys. These are my personal tried and true jet lag tips. You will hear jet lag tips from every travel blogger out there. And I would say 95% of them do not work. They just don't work. There's lots of people who say, oh, well, the week before your trip, start moving your whole lifestyle into the time zone of your destination. I'm like, well, if you have a whole week to be living in an opposite time zone, like especially if you're going to Asia or Australia, where the hours are literally upside down from where we live. If you have a whole week that you can just be living in some weird time zone, I'd spend that extra week over there. I mean, I get what they're coming from, and especially for eating things like that. Some of it can be helpful, but then you get on a plane and they mess you up. So even if you've done everything right for a week before you travel, you get on the plane and their time schedule is just this artificial time zone that is just plane time. And so that is what has always broken that cycle for me. We'll talk about the food thing in just a minute, but there's all kinds of advice that I've read, and most of it just doesn't work. So I'm going to tell you what works for me. What works the best for me is to just be really strict with yourself. I mean, if you can get sleep on the plane, you're already ahead of the game. But even if you can't, be tough on yourself. Do not go to bed until it is bedtime in your destination. I don't care how tired you are. I don't care if your plane got in at 4:30 in the morning. A nap is probably going to mess you up. Now, if you just haven't slept in 3 days because, you had a 48-hour journey to get where you're going, that's a different story. Your body probably can't handle much of anything, and you're just going to have more difficulty dealing with jet lag in general. But if you just had one flight and then you've arrived where you are, do everything you possibly can to just tough it out. You can go to bed a little earlier than normal. Like I usually go to bed around, like 2 in the morning. Not when I'm traveling, but I usually go to bed pretty late. So I will let myself go to bed at like 9 p.m. on that first day. If I really have to have a nap, which again, I don't recommend, keep it to 2 hours or less. You need to keep that several hours. Like maybe you've just gotten into your hotel, it's 10 in the morning, have a quick nap, but get up, do stuff as best you can. Now, my body cannot handle physical activity on the first day, but at least try to stay awake, be reading your travel book, be doing everything you possibly can to stay awake. And, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. There is no magic solution. Coffee or caffeine if it helps. But, if you can, that is the best thing you can possibly do for yourself, because the more tired you are that first night, you don't have to worry about your body not being ready to sleep yet. If you're exhausted because you haven't slept on the plane, your body's going to be like 9 o'clock, I'm out. And then once you just get that first night of proper sleep going, you're going to be set up for better sleep for the rest of your trip. That is the best possible advice I could give you. I realize it doesn't work for everybody. My next best option is to give yourself 24 to 36 hours after you arrive where you don't have anything time critical going on. So if that first day you kind of mess up, you fall asleep, you just can't stay awake, you have a whole other day to try to reset what it is that you're doing. So depending on how long your trip is, we usually travel for at least 2 weeks if we're going to be traveling over multiple time zones, so that we do have that time to adjust. So my body is a wreck after a flight anyway. I literally cannot move. I'm in so much pain the day after a flight. I have to build that in. So I will never go to Australia for just a week. I can't do that. I remember being young and when we were engaged and flying over to London for a 3-day weekend. Yeah, that was when I could just not sleep for 4 days and it was fine. Oh, to be 23 again. But nowadays, no. I just have to build in that extra time into my schedule to accommodate for jet lag. Another thing you have to accommodate for, I did not put this on the slide, I should have. Traveler's diarrhea is a thing. I don't care how much you travel. I don't care how healthy your body is. The little microenzymes that are in tap water, which it's not that the tap water is bad, it's just that they're different in every country. And so they call it Montezuma's Revenge because the first people who noticed it were the conquistadors. But that is just traveler's diarrhea everywhere. If you are going to be staying in some place for a long time and you don't just want to drink purchased bottled water, which I do not recommend for environmental reasons and a whole bunch of other reasons. If you're only going to be somewhere for 48 hours, that's different. It's probably not worth going through the process. But traveler's diarrhea will hit you the first time you drink the tap water, and it'll last 24 to 48 hours. If you want to go ahead and pack some Imodium or antidiarrheal medication to take with you that first time, but if you're going to be there for at least a week, just go ahead and get it over with, and that way you can fill up your water bottle from water fountains or, you know, any of the other places, and you can go ahead and drink the tap water. It'll be perfectly safe for you. So just realize this happens to everybody. Unless you've been in that particular country in the last 12 months, it'll probably happen to you again. So there's nothing wrong with the water. It's just that human bodies, we're all exposed to slightly different amoebas and things in the water, and we just have to get acclimatized to whatever's in the water at your destination. So again, this is one where you just got to be strict on yourself and tough it out. Take the antidiarrheal medication with you, just prepare for it and get it over with as best you can. So next, I will say one of the trickiest things about jet lag is not necessarily the sleeping part. You can get your body on the sleep schedule to your regular time zone, especially if you're a person like me who doesn't have a very regular sleep schedule anyway. But food lag, your stomach wanting to eat at your regular meal times, that can be much more difficult and can take people weeks to really recover from. So you may be waking up at 3 in the morning, not to wake up, but because you're starving. Your body is saying, it's time for my dinner or whatever. That is where you really can prepare yourself in advance. You can prepare yourself several days in advance and continue on the plane. And that is, instead of having your 3 meals a day, have 5 to 6 smaller meals a day. Have regular snack times. That's what I'm talking about. Don't go more than 3 to 4 hours of awake time without having some food. Your stomach will switch over to the new time much, much faster, usually within 2 or 3 days. So have snacks that you can have at your hotel, or, you know, if you're landing in Japan, I would go straight to Family Mart and buy yourself some stuff at the convenience store at the airport. Make sure you have things so when you do wake up in the middle of the night hungry, you can do something about it, but it's not going to totally break your cycle entirely. You do not want to get up at 3 in the morning and cook yourself a full breakfast because you're just so hungry. So, but that is definitely the only thing that I think you can effectively prepare for before you travel, because you don't have to rearrange your whole lifestyle to do that. You just have to break your meals down. And a lot of people recommend that for health reasons anyway. Finally, to encourage sleep, obviously a lot of people have heard of melatonin. It is a natural supplement. It is found in, you know, human bodies already have it. I say supplement, it's a hormone that's in the human body, and it just tells the body that it's time to sleep. Now, we tend to mess up our own melatonin by having lights looking at us. Lights are the body's way of saying it's still daytime, don't sleep now. Melatonin is the opposite hormone that can help you kind of counteract these lights. Now, as a long-term sleep solution, I don't find that it works. I find for myself, it stops having effectiveness after 3 or 4 days, but 3 or 4 days is usually enough to get over jet lag. So it's still great. Obviously, talk to your doctor first if you have any kind of health conditions. Even though these are natural supplements, they do have side effects and they can have interactions with other medications. So don't be taking anything without doctor's consent. But with melatonin, another thing to note is that more is not more. You'll see bottles saying 3 milligrams or 5 milligrams of melatonin, but all the studies suggest that once you get above 1 milligram, it actually backfires. So it doesn't work for you. You want a melatonin dose that is 1/2 to 1 milligram of melatonin. That's going to be more effective. So that can be kind of tricky. If you really can't find a melatonin dose that's that small, make sure you get a tablet and cut it down. But you usually can. It's just people leave those because they think the 5 milligram is going to be better and more effective, but that's just, it backfires because the body thinks, oh, that's too much of this hormone. I'm just going to flush it back out. And now I blinded myself by staring in the lights. So other things that you can do, obviously, if you have sleeping pills that are prescribed for you normally, go ahead and use those according to your new time zone. I'm not an advocate of going out and getting sleeping pills specifically to overcome jet lag, but if it's like I already have to take them because of pain issues, you know, go ahead and let them work on your behalf. But if that still doesn't work, aromatherapy can be helpful, can help you calm down. Lavender is particularly good for that. Chamomile tea if you do not have ragweed allergies. If you have ragweed allergies, chamomile is in the ragweed family. I don't recommend it all. But you know, if chamomile tea or valerian tea soothes you, you can have that before bedtime. The Japanese are really onto something with the hot baths. A hot bath will, you know, raise your body temperature, and then you let the water drain out before you get out of the tub. That slowly lowers your body temperature, puts you into a relaxed state, ready for bed. There's a lot of other health benefits about hot baths, but that one especially great for helping with jet lag. A hot shower doesn't help as much. So for those of you who are thinking, oh, I'll just have a hot shower, it'll be faster, it doesn't really give time for your blood vessels to expand and for your muscles to relax the same way that a hot bath does. You really want at least 10 to 20 minutes in a hot bath for the full effects. And exercise. Remember to finish your vigorous exercise 2 hours before bedtime. In fact, if you can schedule it in, if you're the type of person who likes to go for a walk or go to the gym, that's great. Schedule it in 2 hours before your new bedtime at your destination, but don't continue any closer than 2 hours to when you want to go to sleep, because that can keep you awake with the adrenaline and cortisol. And then to wake up. Not so many helpful tips for waking up. Aromatherapy can be really helpful, especially peppermint and citrus. The easiest way for me is just to get a peppermint soap, like a Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap. You can get little aromatherapy roll-on balls, which are fine. I wouldn't use them on the plane again because people around you may have sensitivities, but once you're in your hotel or whatever, you can use these aromatherapy personally or diffusers, or just have something that you can sniff. I mean, I often just open up my roller ball on the plane and just smell it instead of putting it on me. But yeah, so peppermint, very waking, and it has a little bit of a tingling feel if you use it in the shower. That can really help kind of boost your alertness in the morning. Caffeine, if it's helpful. I mean, most of us can't survive without caffeine, but that's another story. And also for the day when, like I said, maybe you've given yourself the first day off to kind of acclimatize, but that day that you really want to hit the ground running, have something really awesome to look forward to. Nothing is really going to motivate you like that thing you've been wanting to do for a long time. It's going to get you excited, get your heart racing, and that's going to help you wake up. And once you get that going on that first morning, if you're like, today I'm now in my new time zone, again, that'll help set your pace for the rest of your trip. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the entire presentation. Can you believe that I spoke for almost 2 hours just on long haul flights? Y'all could have been on a flight and been, you know, outside the United States by now. Remember the giveaway that we have on the bottom. If you guys have any questions, you can always email me or contact Okashicon on any of our social medias. I really, really, really hope that we see you guys on Thursday. We can close out the slides now. I really hope we see you guys on Thursday night for our New Year's party. Remember, we have so many amazing guests. As soon as we're finished with this, I'm going to go ahead and post some more of the guests that are coming up. Y'all had a sneak peek, but we got to put the rest of our socials. Invite your friends and family. And certainly, even if you can't make it on Thursday, we hope that you come back for Okashicon Online in 2021. Happy holidays to all of you. Please stay safe and healthy and stay sweet. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.